Hi, everybody. Look, we're in the same clothes as last time we did a Q&A video. Our hair is the same length. The pizza box is still next to Dalton. What could this mean? It sure is a different day. We're going to take questions from our patrons so all of our patrons who support us at Basilosaurus tier or higher can submit questions for our monthly Q&A videos that have been coming out purely monthly for the entire time we've had a Patreon. How dare you suggest otherwise?
If you say otherwise, you're getting banned.
Yeah, immediately. So we're going to get right into the questions because we've got a lot of questions to get through. And I'm going to turn this over to the question monger, or question meister, perhaps, Dalton Meyer.
That feels more.
The question Meyer one, if you will.
I think I like question meister the best. That feels tricky.
Question ombudsman.
Ooh. No, I am the question meister, and some meisting I will get up to. Our first question comes to us from Gojira, who asks, if you were the consultants of a new movie or documentary, what species and or formations would you want to be shown, be it the popular species with fresh new looks or obscure guys that need their time to shine? And I have, as is becoming a tradition of mine, an answer that does not really relate to the core of the question, unfortunately, which is I don't have specific species in mind. Maybe one species of late Jurassic Pangacotin would be cool to see. Selfishly, but beyond the species I've named, I think what I would want to see is just another kind of take on one of these documentaries. This one focusing on the evolution of the continents, and like it could predate life, and you could talk about the origin of continents and plate tectonics, which is not something you see discussed in popular media like ever. And following how the movement of the continents around the Earth has influenced the evolution of life. Because it's more important than I think people often give it credit for in terms of influencing climate, having major dynamics on the distribution of species, allowing things to have huge ranges and then constricting those ranges, isolating populations, things like that, and influencing like major global changes pretty much all across the history of life. And so I think kind of a show that's like, here we are in Earth's history. The continents have done this. This means the climate is like this. We're going to go now to the center of Pangaea, a wasteless desert. Now we're going to go to the Isthmus of Panama. It's closing, and animals are exchanging. Like that would be a cool format for a documentary. And then you could focus on the relevant animals for the points you're trying to make. I think is the most important thing. But I can't think of any like species really that I'm like, oh man, this hasn't had a chance to shine yet. I really want to see it because like most stuff has gotten at least to like appear.
I will say that one of the things that I would love to see more of, or like I guess really like almost any in documentary is like, wow, the Triassic of Brazil has some really, really cool stuff that almost never gets featured. But I would not be a consultant for this movie. This would be the researchers who know this way better than I do. I've just very much developed a love for that sort of area over the last year.
There's amazing stuff there. This is a very good answer. Mine is a bit closer to home, I suppose, but I'm just amazed at how little actual documentary attention the Dinosaur Park formation gets.
It's shocking, because honestly.
All of our caveats about the fossil record aside, if there's anywhere we know some of these things, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, the amount of sampling and the amount of data we have about like pathology, social behavior, and everything, just from like the amazing amount of work from the amazing trove of fossils, makes me kind of surprised we don't leverage that for like interesting documentaries. My guess is that like if you're going to do late Cretaceous, you can have T-Rex, so you're going to have T-Rex. But there's an amazing diversity of really cool dinosaurs. There's all of this stuff that we could say about the ecosystem and the way they interact with each other, and it could all be really like well scientifically informed. And I am just perpetually surprised that we don't do it. So Dinosaur Park formation would be fine with me.
I think like some middle-ish Cretaceous stuff around Europe and Africa, because there's interesting things happening on the land and in the water. Like that's where you're getting Allosaurs at the same time. There's like weird dinosaur things happening. That could be interesting. The Solnhofen would be interesting because we actually have a lot of really good things that look like they're still, or like they're recent.
I don't think I've ever seen the Solnhofen in a documentary.
Huh?
I don't think I've ever seen the Solnhofen in a documentary.
Oh, right, that's what I'm thinking of. I'm like, given everything we have from it, you'd think there'd be more. And then, of course, the obvious answer is I think the Seaway deserves more attention. Like, there was one documentary that I don't actually think I've ever seen, but there's so much more I think that could be covered. And I think it could be, if it were a series, like a broader like comparison of the seas through time and space, and like, okay, what's happening in the Kansas Seaway, but also what's happening, in sorry, tired. Also, what's happening in Europe, or even like in the type Maastrichtian area. Like that is a really interesting assemblage of marine critters, and yeah.
You haven't seen the Sea Monsters documentary?
No, I got the book from the book fair, but like
it's on YouTube and it's like a half hour.
I know, but
we should do a documentary watch along, perhaps.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Subscribe to our Patreon.
Indeed.
And we'll release a documentary watch along of a little riff tracks version to go along with some of your favorite paleontology documentaries and also other media.
Quick answers. The tier of things I would want to be consulted on. Things I've published or work on. Anything about the Triassic or Crocs. 3, I wouldn't want to be a consultant. To be a consultant is to be like a whore. You have no control. I would want to direct and write. It would be my creation. And I'm also just kidding. Please hire me as a consultant.
No. You heard him. Hire the rest of us.
He doesn't want to.
He doesn't want to.
No, it would be... I feel like sometimes when you hear various people, depending on what they consulted on, you often hear stories of frustration, depending on like if they get cut around stuff or if they don't know the whole scoop. And I feel like I'd be very frustrated by that, but I would also love an opportunity to consult for a good series, like Prehistoric Planet.
Right.
Is that everyone? Is it time to move on?
It sure is.
Well, hot diggity dog. Thank you for the question. Our next question comes from Dinodom, who asks, if we were to have another living fossil survive today that evolved before the Mesozoic, what would you want? A stem turtle, please. It wouldn't be stem anymore because it's alive, but you know what I mean. A turtle that is very, very plesiomorphic, that doesn't have an entire shell. Please give me that. I want it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I think a stem archosaur would be neat if it was just Lost World style, just still living in a random little pocket of the world, like the Tuatara, where it's just like, oh, there's just one little island where a couple of them are still hanging on.
Dicynodont.
Oh, good one.
I would like to see one. I think it would be cute and pig-like, but also very, very upsetting to look at. It'd be fun.
Now, for me, it's got to be something that like we have nothing of currently that would actually like really help piece together what these animals were like in life. So, some like either a trilobite or a placoderm, like something that's really ancient and really different from everything alive today would be really interesting. And also, they're aquatic, so there's actually like a tiny chance that maybe there could be one somewhere. To be clear, not in the Megalodon conspiracy theory way, just like these are animals that are adapted to living in potentially deep, dark places. And the ocean is not 100% explored, so... And they're also low impact on the environment, unlike a Megalodon, which we would absolutely see the traces of on whales and such.
On the halves of whales that are washing up on beaches.
On the halves of whales, yeah, versus like we're not necessarily going to see trilobite traces on a whale fall. Granted, the fact that they've never been documented at a whale fall was probably good enough. It's probably evidence that they're not hiding out in the abyss, because it's always like mostly the same fauna that appear. Every now and then we get a new weirdo, but it's not looking too good for the trilobite truthers.
And you do get like the biggest shark, some of the biggest sharks that exist in the deep sea going to whale falls, right? Like you get those big six scales.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The unfortunate reality that so much of the deep sea fauna seems to actually be like a recent invasion.
Super recent.
Is doesn't bode well for anything surviving down there long term. But we can
More
always
likely
dream.
in like a lake or a river. I mean, I think Eurypterids. I have two answers. One is I would like to see sea scorpion because I worked on them and they're before the Mesozoic. But like I think in like I kind of need an ediacaran. I like one of those weird palms or fronds. It's not like exciting, but like from a purely science point of view, like I feel like that's super important to figure out what those are. That's it. That's my answer.
And that's what we call a slew of good answers.
Indeed.
To a very good question. Thank you, Dinodom. Our next question comes to us from King Zasshu, who asks, what is objectively the best pterosaur? Worst obviously goes to all of Asdarchidae, which is pretty funny. I mean, it's got to be Pteranodon or Geosternbergia, but honestly, probably Pteranodon. It's just like the classic, like, if you think of a pterosaur, that's what you're thinking of. That's the first thing that comes to mind. And if it isn't, you're lying. So that's it.
See, I'll grant you that like it is the pterosaur whenever I think of a pterosaur, but I think that like taken to the next level and perfected a bit is, at least for me, something like Thalassodromius, that just it's a bit bigger, the head crest is a bit bigger and stuff. Like I think it's a very elegant looking animal.
So you're saying it's like Daniel and Cooler Daniel?
Yes, indeed. Well, honestly, I think that's the case between Pteranodon and Geosternbergia. Honestly,
that's
I
fair.
really think that really sums up my opinion on those two.
There is no good pterosaur. I reject this question on an ontological level. You cannot have a good pterosaur, and therefore you cannot have a best pterosaur. All of them are Tim Burton-esque creations that look like they're just made of angles and splints of wood, and I don't like any of them. Within that constraint, though, Geosternbergia is pretty cool.
Not even like a Neuronathus or like...
If a Neuronathus were around today, I would simply get an over-under shotgun and walk out in my best British gentleman garb to shoot them out of the sky.
Brother, ooh. What's that, brother?
What's wrong with you?
Cute little Batman. It's great.
That's what they want you to think. I follow the primeval portrayal of them as flying piranhas, and
I forgot they did that.
As far as I'm aware, that's based on a lot of research.
That was I remember that being one of the scariest episodes because, like, it's like, oh god, there are a bunch of horrible monsters with like these sharp teeth that'll gnash you up, and I couldn't figure out who were British and who were pterosaurs. I'm like, ooh, who's it going to be? What a terrible show everyone likes for some reason.
I've never watched a single episode.
You're not missing that much.
Amelia,
I think for me...
no, sorry, just...
I think for me it also has to be Pteranodon, and Pteranodon specifically over Geosternbergia, because like there's something about the crest being pointy and like huge. Like it's appropriately huge. It is the right shape. Like that is the pterosaur. You know, like it's hard to beat. Like Geosternbergia is cool. But I think the big Pteranodons are like bigger, right? than our one holotype of Geosternbergia. Yeah, no, it has to be Pteranodon. It's probably was a very nasty animal to be around. But it rules.
Not now. Dalton might call me a liar, but I'm not going to say Pteranodon. But it is going to be in kind of the spirit of Pteranodon, which is, I find, kind of Rempharinchus, kind of classically pterosaur, in like the old antediluvian sense of like a tailed, toothy bat fluttering around. Kind of
Dragon thing.
Yeah, a little dragon monster. Maybe it was also because very early in my undergrad, I almost became a pterosaur person. We avoided that, but
Thank
there
God.
are a lot of cool questions there too. And I was looking specifically at Ramphorhynchids, so I have a fondness for them. Yeah, no, I think most pterosaurs are good. I think they're actually a pretty cool group, unlike a certain someone.
Sorry.
He's speaking his truth, and I'm speaking the truth that's the end of that question. So thank you for that question.
True.
It's time for our next question, which comes just from Ryan Wants to Die. This one's mainly for Scott. What math do you and other fossil preparators use?
I hate to say this to you, my guy. You got to know algebra. Algebra is good to know. I use algebra relatively frequently in fossil prep. Like I went up to calculus and took some calculus in college and stuff. I've never had to use calculus, but basically everything under that I've had to use in some practical application at work or on the job. And not just in using that those specific skill sets, but also in thinking mathematically. The right mindset that you have to be in to work through those mathematical issues, I think, is very important for fossil prep and like just kind of working in academia as a whole. But in terms of what you do in a prep lab, yeah, I do algebra.
Well, thank you for filling us in on your algebraic goings on, Scott.
Of course.
Our next question comes to us from Kyokyodoka, who asks, since you all have talked about it for so long and referenced it many times, what is the study of dinosaur/archosaur sex and reproduction? While egg-laying in dromaeosaurs and hadrosaurs are seemingly easy to think about, the process of egg-laying in sauropods is exceptionally hard for me to imagine due to the evidence not supporting the Walking with Dinosaurs sea turtle tube. I am interested in hearing your words on it and perhaps explaining the sex lake theory you mention often. I don't recall mentioning these things often, but perhaps we have.
I don't recall talking about these things at length or often.
I also don't remember what I ate yesterday without having to think hard about it, so, take my memory with a grain of salt. So there isn't like really a name for or even a dedicated study of dinosaur reproductive behavior. People look into that as a sub, like there's not like, it's not like a whole subfield of paleontology. People do research on it. Typically, I mean, people study dinosaur eggs because that's the only evidence we have of their reproductive behavior, whether that's eggs that are laid or like the one instance I can think of eggs in the body cavity of, I think it's an Oviraptorosaur. Which is a really cool fossil, but like there's so much of dinosaur reproductive behavior that we can't directly study. We can make some inferences with things like the phylogenetic bracket, right, which indicates that dinosaurs probably did have an intermittent organ, as opposed to many like advanced modern birds, which have lost that secondarily. But
intermittent organ?
It's a penis.
Oh, okay. When you said intermittent, I thought I was like, does it fall off in the non-breeding season?
Intromittent. It means it sends things in.
Okay. Say. I misheard. I thought it was intermittent, and I very vividly had an image in my head of a T-Rex shedding its like an elk.
That's where,
at the end of us. So and being surprised by it, like the elk always are. Sorry, Dalton, you were saying.
That's where they got their bully sticks from. But no, so there's evidence. Like there's evidence we can make from the bracket, which is some of it, like anatomical evidence from the bracket that was probably a pretty sound inference to make. There are behavioral things from the bracket that are, not quite, I would say, as sound of an inference, but can at least inform a conservative opinion. Things like nest tending. Behaviors, which are common to archosaurs, probably were common in dinosaurs as well, but we don't know for sure. And there's hundreds of millions of years of evolution to change that, right? So how exactly sauropods, like in your instance, this question of how exactly they laid their eggs does remain a mystery. But I think probably the simplest explanation is just that they squatted down to lay them. And that would probably suffice. in terms of your second part of the question, the sex lake theory, so that comes from, there's a physicist named Brian Ford who's published, I think, at least one, maybe two books now about how he doesn't think that dinosaurs could live on land. He is wrong. But he has come to the independent conclusion that all paleontologists are wrong and that dinosaurs were too big to support their weight on land. And the sex lake idea was an early idea of his, that one of the cause of dinosaur extinction was the movement of continents that dried up, caused the loss and the drying up of a bunch of large, deep lakes, and that these lakes would have been necessary for dinosaurs to reproduce because he could not conceive of how such large animals could mount one another to mate. And so they had to have their body weight supported by water, and so they had to reproduce in these lakes. And then when these lakes dried up, they couldn't reproduce. This is crankery, it's nonsense, and it's not really worth serious consideration. And it's become a bit of a meme in the internal paleo community.
Oh, very much so.
And like sometimes I worry that like, oh, these memes might actively spread misinformation, but in this case, I'm not tremendously worried about that.
There's a video game.
There is a video game. Is there anyone else have anything to say?
I think that was masterfully done, Dalton.
Our next question comes to us from Caiman, who says, not a lot of traction goes into invertebrates when it comes to the Mesozoic. So, what's the crew's favorite Mesozoic invertebrates? No Carboniferous fauna here, just some beetles, crabs, and maybe a snail or two. And I'm going to cheat and mention something that you didn't put in here, which is marine invertebrates. Well, I guess you mentioned crabs, but marine invertebrates, because frankly, I don't have any... I'm sorry to say this. This sounds crass and mean. I don't personally have much interest in Mesozoic terrestrial invertebrates because they're just like modern ones, but different a little bit. And I don't have that much interest in modern terrestrial invertebrates. Scientifically, actually, I think I have more scientific interest in them than I have like naturalistic interest. I'm not a tremendous fan of like bug watching or collection. I have that kind of
bug watch.
I have that, innate aversion to arthropods that, a more learned person would drill out of themselves through power of mind, but I have not. And so I will say that I like heteromorph ammonites. I think they're really, really cool. And I wish they were alive today because I think they'd be neat to collect their shells and like see them in an aquarium.
Dalton gives the correct opinion here in that heteromorph ammonites are rad. They're so neat. But I'll say that like I don't find them that like interesting as animals in and of themselves. Not ammonites, the thing I'm leading up to. Not that I don't find them super interesting as animals in and of themselves because they would have looked relatively normal. But of all the invertebrate fossils that I find out in the field, belemnites are the ones that I'm most excited to find. I think they're neat. But in life, they just would have looked like squid. They just would have looked like regular squid. That's an internal shell.
I like ammonites.
Based.
That's the only Mesozoic invertebrate that I can think of off the top of my head. I know there were bugs, but I don't know of any of them. So, ammonites it is.
There will be bug.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Because I think they would have done the funny that nautiluses do, which is they kind of just float around and sometimes bump into things, which is like my favorite part of a nautilus in any documentary is inevitably they're going to bump into something. And it's just very funny. I like when bugs meaning invertebrates broadly, because we don't need to restrict the use of that word in this context. I like when bugs do things that are very silly and just kind of, absent-minded, because of course they're absent-minded. It's an invertebrate. There's not a lot going on upstairs. Yeah, I just love ammonites and nautiluses in that form of the spiral. The spiral gets me. I like it.
Not to tread ground that's already been tread. So I think rudist bivalves are fucking wild. The weird horn-shaped reef-building clams.
Those guys are really cool.
Some of the octopus relatives that were living in the Mesozoic, like the Tusatuthids, are kind of cool looking. They're like transitional praying mantids that have like features of cockroaches that are like early that we're catching in amber in some places that are cool. That's all the stuff that jumped to my mind. That's not just ammonites, which is the obvious and best answer.
That was a good answer. I actually would like to see those mantids. I think I've heard of them, but I've never seen them.
And those weird Jurassic crustaceans with like the huge eyes. I forget what they're called.
Oh yeah,
I don't know those.
The ones that they made the Among Us meme about.
Oh yeah.
I forget what they're called. They are cool.
Amogus.
Oh yeah. I don't remember what they were, but yeah.
Also a funny meme that I think, unfortunately, some people were like, "Oh, did they actually discover this?" And if anyone ever says, "Oh, we found an animal that looks like an Among Us creature," you can be with 99% confidence that it's a joke.
It would be, in fact, kind of sus.
Exactly, it's very sus. And Amelia, if you are fascinated with the spiral, boy, do we have a manga for you.
I was about to say. Have you seen the trailer for the
anime? I think it comes out this weekend, actually.
Yeah.
Does it really?
Cool.
Oh my god. I need to watch that. Holy shit.
For what?
Uzumaki.
The AC.
For Uzumaki.
Okay. No, I have no idea what that is.
It's so good.
It's a horror manga involving spirals is the central theme.
It's
by Junji Ito.
Junji Ito, who's kind of a legend in that field.
He's very good. I love him. My brother also loves him. Next question, though, is a good one.
The next question is a good one. The next question, and thank you, Caiman, for your question, making us think about invertebrates. Dino Nerd 1 asks our next question, which is, who among the skeleton crew, in your opinion, has the best beard? Scott.
Right now, or like generally?
I took it as generally because okay. I never remember what people look like. Alex, yours is quite nice right now, but Scott, I think
Scott's wins.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate this.
Our next question comes to us from Rad Reptile 615, who asks, could modern day avies reach the titanic sizes of their non-avian dinosaur cousins? As of right now, the elephant bird is the largest we know of, but does the modern non-flying avian body plan cap off? Potentially at the same mass as T-Rex or Giganotosaurus? What conditions would facilitate such gigantism in birds? Also, Coke or Pepsi? I know James prefers the taste of Kuru Cola.
I like that one a lot.
I like that. My initial thoughts on this, without being a bird biologist or a whale biologist. We're whale biologists. No, they're owl exterminators. The whale biologist has a cool voice.
What on earth are you doing?
Owl exterminators. I'm having Futurama moment where there is a whale biologist that demands respect. But I'm not a whale or a bird biologist. But I think that if a bird was to evolve to T-Rex size, not necessarily impossible, right? It would require certain conditions and probably certain dietary changes in order to get the energy necessary to like maintain that size of a body. But it would also have to acquire a number of supporting features of its anatomy to just carry that weight. That would in turn make it look a lot less like the birds we are used to. Like, I don't think you would have like a T-Rex sized ostrich that looks just like an ostrich, but enormous. It would probably acquire features that would make it look, at least in some regards, more like a non-avian dinosaur, because those are just necessary to be big. Also, I prefer Coke to Pepsi generally. I think Coke tastes better. But everything has its time and place. And sometimes it's a Pepsi time. These times come across more often. But Pepsi is, while I prefer Coke, I kind of think of them just as very different objects. Right? Like Coke is more acidic and kind of more biting. And that's often what I'm looking for. Pepsi is a much sweeter and more mellow beverage. And sometimes that's nicer. And sometimes that pairs better with flavors. Like, I think, controversially, vanilla Pepsi might be better than vanilla Coke, despite the fact that I like them both. And on occasion, I do prefer a cherry Pepsi to a cherry Coke.
That was going to be
despite the fact that I like cherry Coke a lot. And sometimes, like a sommelier, one might pair a Coke with more meals, but there are some things that a Pepsi is just going to taste better with. And sometimes you just want a nice, calming brown soda beverage. And in those moments, one might turn to the humble Pepsi.
Thank you very much, Reverend Dalton Meyer, soda sommelier.
Okay. I will just tack on to Dalton's answer. I, perhaps controversially, generally prefer Diet Coke because I find on diet sodas like sickeningly sweet. They make my teeth hurt. But weirdly enough, I prefer normal Pepsi. So I'd say like undiet Pepsi. Diet Pepsi is gross though, but I like Diet Coke a lot. I had to quit in college. At one point when a friend was hosting me for several days, he bought it was like 2 days. He bought me a 12-pack of Diet Coke that I think I slammed through in the first day. And then I quit, and I've been clean ever since.
James, did you have any thoughts on the bird aspect of this question?
Oh, yeah, you're not going to get a bird that big. I don't think, like you said, Dalton, you'd have to do so much modification, I don't think you'd even think of it as a bird anymore. Birds are built very strongly. They've probably done what we call walking up an adaptive landscape to a local adaptive peak. And the idea here is that if you envision the variables that affect how fit you are evolutionarily, you could kind of, if you imagine there's 3 axes, you could imagine there's like a landscape there. And so there will be combinations of traits that are more fit or less fit. And I mean, fit doesn't mean strong. Again, this is evolutionary, so fit means well suited to your environment and niche. You can do this thing called walking up your adaptive peak, where you cannot evolve to a new body shape because you're so constrained by the fact that you're up here, and to get even to a better place, you would need to go through something where it's less optimal. This is, I think, an important principle. It's much more broadly applicable than in paleontology and evolutionary biology. But birds have so gotten up that adaptive peak with all the modifications to their body that I do think they're functionally excluded from a lot of other niches they could occupy. They're very, very good at making being a bird into doing something else, but that does seem to preclude them from being giant terrestrial animals. I think a big part of that's probably also physiological. Like, they have pretty fast metabolisms, so you'd need to be doing some metabolic slowing, changes to the way growth works, et cetera, et cetera. I think it would be very unlikely. And that's perhaps evidenced by the fact that it doesn't seem to have happened. Moas and elephant birds are big compared to modern birds, but they're not like T-Rex sized.
No, not at all. Also, it's cool. I don't hear people talk about adaptive landscape stuff that much, and that's a lot of what Stephanie does, and I've thought it was kind of neat since I've learned about it.
It's an important principle, I think, to understanding why a lot of things as a kind of example that's very familiar to me, the New York City subway system's in like a state of precarious disrepair, which is acknowledged by basically every New Yorker and the entire political system. You could think of the fact that we can't fix it as a kind of sociological or political instance of a fitness landscape, where to fix it, you have to go through the period of time where there is no functional New York City subway system, which is so damaging to the economy and to the livelihoods of everybody there that you kind of have to just keep it going as it is because the alternative is so destructive.
Yeah.
And it's like that. Like, could you make a human forcibly into, like, when we talk about what can't evolve, we are probably mostly talking about regions where the fitness cost of the transitional step is so high that you then can't get there, rather than literally genetically you could not make this happen.
Right.
Like, could you do a bunch of things that would give a human gills? Probably. There's probably the right genes you could like change, and the right expression of different proteins and hormones during development that could induce gills to develop. You're going to do so much damage to the rest of the system, though, that you're not going to make a human who could swim and breathe underwater. And so usually we're not talking like there's a literal hard thing that could not possibly be circumvented.
Stop that.
But we're talking about you can't get there from here, right? To go from A to C means you have to go through B, and B is a bad place to be.
So much of the avian skeleton is like, these are features evolving for flight, like the construction of like the horizontal femur, the metabolisms, their
All the stuff they do with their breast muscles.
Yeah, stuff like that, where you're basically, if you want to like turn a bird into something you could evolve like a hadrosaur-sized animal from, you're going to have to like break down. You're going to basically like, all right, we got to get rid of most of the like first principles down to you basically remake a silosaur out of a bird and then go from there. If it would be tough. Also,
it would be very hard.
Coca-Cola, Pepsi is a third-rate soda. I can think of like 8 brands of root beer and obviously Dr. Pepper that are superior to Dr. Pepper. I'm sorry, to Pepsi. But Coke reigns supreme.
I have nothing to add to the bird discussion, but I agree that Coke is better in every context. Like, the sugar-free Cokes are better than any sugar-free Pepsi, because Pepsi is impossible. It's impossible for Pepsi to like be decent. Like, it's tolerable when it's cherry, but that's because of the cherry. And I would still always rather have a cherry Coke. And also, Coke has an invention that, to my knowledge, Pepsi does not, which is cherry vanilla, which is the superior soda of
It is really
of most. It's top tier. I don't know if I'd say it's the best, but it's up there for me at least. Silly question.
See, I'll say that again. I also mostly Coke over Pepsi, but I'm similar to Dalton that sometimes like I'll get a Pepsi and I'm just like, you know what, this is kind of hitting the spot. And sometimes I do prefer cherry Pepsi over cherry Coke. Only sometimes. But
if the spot to be hit is I feel like I'm developing a cavity in real time, then yeah, I suppose it's time for Pepsi. Like for me at least, it's so disgustingly sweet. I just can't do it.
I will also say that Coke also has the edge of having the good old glass bottle real sugar ones.
Oh, those are so good.
Kick ass.
No, Coke is awesome. I think maybe Dr. Pepper even could be superior to Coke, but that wasn't part of that's not a parameter. But Alex did introduce the idea. I will also put out there, if you can still find them, I don't know if they're still made. I had them once. I saw it at a gas station and I was so intrigued that I had to have it. They made nitro Pepsis, at least at one point, which was, if you're familiar with like Guinness as a beer, it's a nitro beer. If you had nitro cold brew, they're things that are, instead of using CO2 for carbonation to make them fizzy, they use nitrogen to make them fizzy. And it makes it like a much smoother beverage. And they made nitro Pepsis in a can. And they were like, please pour this out into a glass and then enjoy cold. And I did do that. And I did enjoy it very much. And they also had a vanilla nitro Pepsi, which was an insanely good soda. Loved it. So if you can find it, give it a try. Not to be a Pepsi evangelist because Coke is better, but the nitros were something different.
They were built different, you might say. And if you want to say that, you can buy some of our stickers, or some of our pins that are still. I did the opposite of the other one.
You are shameless.
I am shameless. We didn't talk about it. And James, you want us to make more money, so I will continuously shamelessly pitch this. If you want to be built different as well, take a look. We have pins left for sale. They're left over from our con that we made an appearance at, and they are limited time only. And we aren't making more of them in supplies. Whatever. We only have so many of them, and please buy them. And especially please buy the built different one, because that was the one that I designed, and it's selling bad. And so buy it, and it'll make me personally happy. What else do you need besides that?
That's a good point.
That is a good point. And that was a good question, Rad Reptile 615. Thank you for asking it. And here comes our next question, which is from Mr. Suchomimus, who asks, if Epic Rap Battles of History made a Cope v. Marsh rap battle, what would y'all want it to be like? I'll show my hand here, in that I have not watched an Epic Rap Battles of Epic Rap Battles of History video, I think, since high school. So it has been over 10 years since I have watched one of these videos. So I don't know what they've been doing since, like, the Obama election. But thinking back to the Epic Rap Battles of History videos that I enjoyed, I suppose I would want it to be like the Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson one, because that's also scientists. But I don't know what I would really want in it. I'm sorry to say. I know that's probably not the answer, you were not really a fulfilling answer, but I don't feel qualified to give one. This would be like asking me a question about invertebrates, right? I can give a very surface level answer. So that's my thoughts on this potential epic rap battle of history.
I've never seen any of them. I have no opinion on this.
I like Dalton. I have not watched an epic rap battles of history in many years. I think I would like it. So given that I know nothing about how they currently are and remember actually very little about them, my hope would be that it would have a good and clever interrelation with the actual stuff that happened in the Bone Wars. Good references that show they've really done their work. I think that would be cool.
Here's my answer. I've seen every epic rap battles of history video, at least I think so. It's like my SNL, which is I like to see what they're up to.
Alex, is that true? You've watched every single epic rap?
Yeah, I think so. At least of last year.
Oh my God.
I'll get a grim curiosity because I'll get one recommended. I think I had one recommended to me that was like Karl Marx. I'm like, oh, let's see what cool insights they have about him.
Did they?
I mean, the production value is pretty good, but
who cooked up? Hang, I'm looking at their page.
they have like celebrity. They had Snoop Dogg on one, which is kind of.
Who cooked up Wonder Woman versus Stevie Wonder? Oh, because Wonder's in both their names.
Yeah, as soon as you started saying it, you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
No, and they had
I'm
Key and
not the brightest bulb in
Peele.
the
Like
box.
they had like a point where they were able to pull some names.
Oh, I think the last one I saw was Obama versus Mitt Romney. They have not released a video for the last 7 months.
Oh, maybe they died.
I wonder.
I think I'm up to date.
Well, I was going to say it. Although it doesn't look like they actually release as frequently as I thought, because they only have 88 videos, which is like half as many as the Skeleton Crew does, which is shocking. I guess their stuff is a little bit higher production effort anyway.
A little bit.
But then again, they've been going for 12 years, so... Although it does look like they've removed a bunch of videos. Anyway, I'm just happy to see things from old YouTube persisting. Because though modern YouTube is the one we inhabit, my lord, I do kind of miss this thing where it would just be like, I don't know, clearly people with some production background, but like things were a little wackier. You had one shtick and you just did it. I like it.
No, it's like really, it's like them, they come to mind, and Red Letter Media is like the old horror, like the Lazarus taxon that survived.
Yeah, I remember really liking, watching Freddie Wong. The Corridor people survived. Freddie Wong. Well, I think Freddie Wong and the guy he made all his videos with, his friend Brandon, wound up having a really big falling out, and the channel basically stopped existing. But then the Corridor people took it up, and now they do reaction videos mostly, because apparently you have to react to things, and that's what people want to see.
And if memory serves, I think Freddie Wong actually, it's actually working in Hollywood in VFX stuff now.
I think so. I think he wanted to go more into the formal production chain, and Brandon wanted to stay as a YouTuber. And I don't know. It doesn't look like Brandon Latch wound up actually doing anything, which I always found sad. I always thought he was actually the cooler one of the two. No, he's making videos. They're getting in the 100,000 views. Whatever. Okay, sure.
All right. Next.
Whatever.
Okay. Yeah, our next question comes to us, and thank you, Mr. Suchomimus, for your question. Our next one comes to us from the man with no name, who asks, if money and housing wasn't an issue, what would be your dream pet? And I'm going to give an answer that you might think I would say some kind of big lizard. And I probably should, because I would like a big lizard. That's true. That's very true. But the thing is that a very big lizard is kind of more attainable than what I would consider my dream pet situation to be, which would just be to have a humongous room with 2 aquaria in it. One, a big saltwater coral enclosure that is a big oval that can have sharks and rays. Just little ones, nothing insane. And then the other to be a big freshwater enclosure with some of the big Amazonian fish. Which is these aren't things that are like strictly illegal, right? Because like I can think of many animals that could be a cool pet that just are like completely impossible.
Yeah, like
But
a
these
chimp,
are
right?
not a chimpanzee. I mean, in the sense that you could get one, but I would never want one. But no, in the sense that like this is if you had enough money in space, you could theoretically have this. But I simply will never like have the amount of money, space to dedicate to these aquaria. That would be really cool to have.
I want a Caiman lizard paludarium.
Yeah, that's good.
That's it. I want a big room that's like an open tank with some land space, and I want one or multiple big Caiman lizards swimming, eating snails, and living their best lives. They are so cool. I love them all.
I just want these two guys, Jake and Elwood, but in a bigger house. No, I'm actually slightly amending my answer that I put in our planning document. I would love a like really big freshwater aquarium. And honestly, one of the ones that I've always thought is really cool and kind of like weirdly underrepresented is like a North American freshwater aquarium where either something like with like gar and stuff in it, because love gar so much, or like honestly, and this one would be way more attainable, is like a smaller one with a lot of flowing water and having like brook trout or something in there, because like I just think they're gorgeous, and a lot of the aquaria that I see that are set up for those are very pretty. But my like pie in the sky real big one is I've seen a couple folks on social media who have like greenhouses that they've turned into like little like rainforest exhibits basically, and they just like grow a bunch of really cool, really pretty plants in there, have it very humid, have some sort of water feature with fish in there, and then just release a bunch of like birds and lizards into it that don't tend to hurt each other, and just like do that. And I'm like, that sounds awesome. Would it be practical? No. Would it be attainable? Not really. Do I love the sound of it? Absolutely.
I was told there were no limitations.
There were no what?
Limitations to this question.
Oh, no limitations. Yes.
I want a private bay in which I will keep whale sharks. It's enormous. I mean, like a whole bay, like visible on a map. It would be hard. Like if you'd want to see the whale sharks, you would have to look for them. You'd have to take a boat out and try to find them. And those would be I want big marine things that I would feel less bad about keeping, even partially enclosed. And by like, it's enormous. It's bigger than any fish tank that exists in the world. It's just a section that they live in, and I hang out with them. That is my idea. Like the biggest, coolest fish you can hang out with.
That's a beautiful dream.
If not, then some cool big Amazon fish in a similar in just a section of river that I live near. That's it. That's my answer. That's the question.
Well,
Yeah,
Amelia,
I apologize.
I'm also it's okay. In the freshwater aquarium camp, it's something that like I've always wanted to do and just not had the space or money to do it. And also at this stage of my life, not the stability. A lot of apartments don't allow any kind of aquarium filled with water, much less a large aquarium for obvious reasons. Yeah, and I think Scott's mentioning like the local like North American freshwater fish, I think kick ass. Like I love native fish. Like even something as common as like bluegill and crappie like are so pretty when you can actually see them hanging out in the water. Like they're pretty when you catch them, but like, oh my God, some of them are so cool. You know, and I really love catfish, and there's plenty of native catfish in North America that would hang out and not be a total menace, because that's the main problem with catfish in aquaria is that they're mean and they eat everything else because they have no morals. But the ones at least that I'm thinking of, like little channel cats and stuff, don't get too big, so you could have them with other cool things.
Amelia and I both just want to live in like a Bass Pro Shops or Cabela's.
Basically. Yeah, like on the one hand, I think like large lizards, like monitor lizards, are very cool, but they're such a pain in the ass. And they're so unpredictable with respect to personality. And it's like, I think the appeal of a large lizard is that you can hang out with it, and that is ruined if the lizard does not want to hang out with you, which with monitor lizards is more common than not, which is okay. Like, you know, they're animals. They're not, you need to consider their needs first. But anyway, that's why I know, like, I wouldn't go for that initially, because they tend to be a pain, literally and metaphorically.
Indeed. Sorry, I lost the tab there for a second. But a really fun question to think about. I like to think about animals and being around them because I like animals. And so our last question of the episode comes to us from Insert Nickname, which is there a dream hobby which you would have loved to invest yourself in but can't due to work restraints / work in general? My answer is yes, many things. The things that immediately come to mind is that I would like to learn to play guitar. I have started to do this process several times, but have consistently lacked both the free time and the willpower, I would say, to like stick with it. So it's something I'd like to do. And given more time, but also more space and funds, I would like to get into like model making / diorama making. Like, I don't know if I want to have like a model train set. Like, that's what comes to mind is like making like a big train room. Like, I love that idea. I like trains. I'm not so into them that I'm like, that the idea of having the trains is what's driving me, but the idea of building the landscape for the trains and like that kind of space. And I think trains are just kind of the easiest way to do that in my mind of like how to like get into that. But something of that oeuvre of making like these like spaces and like doing stuff with your hands and like actually like making something cool would be good. I would like to do that someday.
I'll also say like playing an instrument. I used to play an instrument back in the day. I was trombone player in high school, and I was pretty damn good at it, honestly. But dropped it when I went to college and haven't really picked up an instrument since. I've considered strongly learning how to play harmonica because I think that would be fun. But never really gave it a good old college try. But other than that, drawing, I used to be a much better drawer, and I haven't given myself the time to do that in ages. Honestly, like doing some of the art stuff for the Skeleton Crew has been a good outlet for me on this. But yeah, I miss that.
I will sound like I'm imitating my friends here, but I used to play instruments.
What did you play?
I played piano and cello. I'm not going to say I was ever incredibly good because, I mean, we've previously discussed my, like, just kind of mental inability to really understand music deeply. So it's not like I was going to have a future as a real musician or something, but I could play, I could play a song if presented with music, you know what I mean? I had some songs that I had memorized and could perform. I missed that. I gave that up around high school when I was starting to focus, like, much harder on doing, like, science extracurriculars and stuff, and then never picked it back up. I would love to get into miniature model making. I actually have some miniature model kits in my house that I've been saving for theoretically having time one day to learn how to do model making. Hasn't happened yet. I bought them about 12 years ago. So there we are. And in the past, I've never studied it like formally or taken any lessons, but I'm not inherently a bad artist. And I think with practice, I could have actually become quite good. But I've never really practiced it systematically. But you know, when push comes to shove, I can actually do a fairly good job with that stuff. It's something I even started doing a little bit during my PhD. I started trying to do like anatomical illustration for hopefully one day being able to do that for myself. But quickly learned that rendering things out in 3D in Blender was often often what I needed, and it was something I could already do, and I've kind of gotten good at that instead.
Friend Amelia.
Yeah, a lot of things in keeping with the same theme of I used to have more hobbies before academics got more time consuming. I used to draw a lot more. I wish I could have kept up with that. I was able to take a drawing elective in college that was really fun. I wish I could just really just dedicate more time to it. Painting specifically also, like, I think would be really interesting to learn because it works so differently than, like, I used to just draw with colored pencils. I used to write a lot more for fun. Like, I'd write like fantasy things and poetry. And I also used to play instruments, violin and piano, that I had to stop doing because I didn't have room for them in my schedule in high school. And the out there one, where money is the main factor and also part of the reason I'm here to begin with at all, is aviation. I would love to have a little airplane that I could just fly and take places. And yeah, no, I love it, but unfortunately flight school is very expensive, so.
There are many things we would like to do.
Sorry, yeah.
And one of them is end this video.
I would like
Indeed.
to
Which we can now do.
briefly
because the
speak
video's
to
over.
my hobbies, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry,
let
Alex. I forgot you hadn't
talk.
gone. You said, I'm sorry, friend. Go ahead, friend Amelia. And in my brain, I was like, Alex answered the question.
No, I have managed to keep some hobbies, but not as many as I'd like. Dioramas have always been interesting to me, but I don't know if I would actually do them. I used to write. I've never finished writing a story, but I have like 8 short little weird horror fiction. They're not even all horror. Some of them are just kind of like dream logic bits that are like anywhere from 30 to 70% done. And I've always been like, I should look at those again, or maybe try to write some, or maybe try to finish one. I've never really done that. I've kind of turned that energy into DMing for Call of Cthulhu and stuff, which I like doing. But I'd like to try just to finish one of those. That would be nice. Yeah. That's if as the question asks, if I had nothing but time and money, I would like to try making like a short film of some kind, just like learning everything from like principles and like seeing what I could do. I don't think it'd be great, but I'd like to try it. That's it. Yeah, those are my answers.
That is an interesting one that I hadn't considered, because that was like something, again, Skeleton Crew has been my way back into like doing some of the video production type stuff. I had always like wanted to do that. Definitely, if I did not have to work a job, that would probably be what I'd want to do. That it would be super cool. Well, anyway, the video's over now.
Yes, it is.
We conclude with a rumination on the things that we have lost in our quest to become paleontologists. I once, when I was lecturing this summer, I was describing to students like what you might see in somebody with like, a fairly lean body mass. And I said, you may not believe this, but I was once actually able to see this on my own body. And they were like, what happened? And I was like, I did a PhD. Never forget what they take from you. And they were just like, okay, like, they'll see. They'll all see. Anyway, we're done with the video now. So thank you all for watching.
Yes.
Thank you for sending in questions. We are probably not going to be in the same clothes when we do our next Q&A video.
No.
But then we'll kind of be back on schedule, and we're really excited because, we've all had a lot going on over the last few months. There have been people moving, changing jobs, getting, dissertation stuff on track, getting papers from their dissertation finally back on track after a long hiatus period. Many things going on. And so we also, I guess, what I just want to say to all of our viewers and our patrons especially is thank you for your patience.
Indeed.
We know that you understand that we are like we are both scientists and content creators. We treat both of those roles really seriously. And I know that all of you are aware that that means that our schedules are often filled right to the brim. And we sometimes have to, not do things when we would like to do them or when we should do them because other things have suddenly taken priority. And we really appreciate your patience because, it makes us feel very, very welcome in the community we've generated around ourselves or kind of had form around us, rather than feeling like our fans would abandon us if we do not produce the videos at that kind of regular pace. And that, I think that might sound silly, but that does mean a lot, at least to me as a creator, to know that, if things are going on, you guys, it's even if you guys are disappointed the videos aren't coming out, you're not going to cut and run because we missed a deadline or something like that. That said, we are trying to, now that we've kind of resolved a lot of things this summer, get all of this stuff back on track and have the Q&As coming out monthly as they should. So thank you again. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your generosity. And thank you for supporting us. As I say at the end of every video, we could not keep doing the Skeleton Crew without the incredibly generous support we get from you guys. It is just not, it would just not be in the cards. And so I want to thank our most generous patrons, who not only have their names in the credits like all of our patrons do, but support us at such a generous tier that we give you a special verbal shout out at the end of every video. And today I want to thank Benjamin Siepser, nickname Philip Fico, Christopher Bellis-Jones, Aaron Anderson, Adam Olos, Black Spectral Pig, Blacklight Virus, Camphibia, Chaotic Kaiju, Dan O'Kyrus, Dinodom, Kevin Preem, King Zasshu, Life Finds a Way, Max Ironpaw, Pythonic, Ryan Wants to Die, Swamp Ape Science, Wanderer, and Wheat. Thank you all so much for your support of the channel. Thank you to all of our patrons for your continued support. And thank you to all of our viewers who show your support by watching these videos and dropping a comment and leaving a like on the video before you go. Thank you all so much. We will see you at some point for another video. As of recording, we have no idea when this is going to release relative to other videos we're doing. And so we simply cannot convey any of that information meaningfully at the end of the video. And so it'll come out in close proximity to other videos, presumably. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.